GM. Is this sounding correct? All right. Well, hello, everyone. Today I'll be speaking a bit about how we're thinking of trade-offs within our architecture as the new protocol that we're building at Aragon. So to kick things off, potentially let's start with a bit of a background of who we are, why we're here, and why it matters. So Aragon started back in 2017, originally with the idea of crystallizing the process of setting up a DAO. Now, if you've been around since then, you've probably seen that a lot of things have changed. We have now around 5,000 DAOs created, around $17 billion locked in market cap, billions in trading value, around 4 million token holders. And so there's certainly been a lot happening in this space since Aragon's product was first created. Now, I'm just wrapping up and sort of showing all of that to say that there's been a lot of insights and patterns that we've noticed across the ecosystem, even within all these bulls and bears. And the strongest realization we've had lately is contextualizing that there is a lot of gibbery-jabberish going around in the ecosystem, but in reality, DAOs are merely permission management systems. So let's lock that in and think a bit about what that means. If we look at the definition of DAOs, it can get very complex, right? There's a lot of different organizations doing a lot of different things. But ultimately, if we look at the stronger pillars that all DAOs have, we run into these three main labels. So at initial level, of course, the community. The people. Organizations are groups of people trying to perform certain actions, building a better future. And if that's true, then we need money. And so at a second pillar, we have the treasury. And because we have funds, that means that we need to manage them. Ergo, we have a coordination, collaboration, governance mechanism supporting the management of these assets. Now, what we've seen across our experience is that even though these three pillars exist, they're working at different parts of a spectrum in each organization, right? There's no single black or white best practice roadmap to set up a DAO. Everyone comes at it from a different strategy, from a different angle point. And as we were doing a lot of our user research, we realized that it was taking DAO builders anywhere from 6 months to a year, just wrapping their heads around what it means to build a DAO with an ecosystem that has so many complexities. And so we came up with these three main North Star pillars that we're focusing on. On an initial level, the ecosystem is currently too complex. There is too much information out there. It's hard to know what information is relevant for me. And so it is increasingly important that if we are to increase the amount of DAOs in the world, then we have to simplify a lot of the product offering and a lot of the education around it. On a second level, existing frameworks were too monolithic, ourselves included. We were building a framework that was opinionated, trying to bring clarity into an otherwise very abstract concept. But the reality today is that DAOs are growing in entirely new use cases, niche spaces, and we need to be building a protocol that is modular, that is flexible, and that is open to all these new possibilities that we can't even imagine today. And on a third level, because organizations are groups of people, they evolve, they change. And this is something that is hard to conceive in a world where we're building immutable smart contracts that will not change in the future. And yet, at the same time, when we are at the people layer, we need these organizations to be adaptable. And so, if we look at the types of actions that every organization is performing, yes, they're making collective actions. Yes, they're depositing and withdrawing funds. But ultimately, they're giving X addresses, X permissions to execute X actions. And so all the DAOs are is managing permissions. And so we're not building this big, mansion or big setup that already comes in with pre-handed ideas, but rather looking at those little Legos, the pieces that fit together and can support any type of organization that comes around. So let's get to the meat of it. So we're looking right now at the basic structure of the architecture of our protocol. At an initial level, we have the DAO contract. This is the entry point, and you can imagine this contract as being more of like a treasury. It's a contract that contains the functions of withdrawing, of deposit, of executing actions. But at the heart of it is the ACL. ACL stands for Access Control Lists. It is the main contract that allows the creation and distribution of these permissions so that then all of the plugins can perform whatever actions they want to perform. So the protocol itself is very lean in the sense that it's merely the DAO contract and the permission management system. And every other functionality that you're able to do with the DAO is built through plugins. So let's look at an example. Hi, I'm Jules. I have some friends. We're going to set up an investment DAO. Right now, we just have an alpha Telegram chat, and we want to turn that into a vault in which we can share assets, swap tokens, stake some fun stuff, right? So at an initial level, I go into the app. I click on the Create DAO button. That call on the back, that's calling our SDK. Our SDK is then initializing a DAO instance, and this DAO instance will have two plugins. So on one level, the Uniswap plugin, which allows me to swap tokens, and another level, the Lido plugin that allows me to stake our ETH. Now, at this stage, like I said, we're a Telegram chat. We vote in polls. We don't need something more sophisticated as we're just starting out. But then our Telegram chat grows. We have thousands and hundreds of people in it. Everyone wants to be involved in our money-making machine. And so ultimately, our needs start to differ. They start to evolve. And now we need a governance mechanism to make sure that we can arrange all of that. And we simply add in a new plugin. Potentially, if we were using another plugin that we no longer liked, maybe we had NFTs and we want to switch that to ERC20s, then we just revoke the permissions of the ERC20 token and grant permissions to the ERC21 plugin. And so what we're seeing is that even though these contracts are still immutable and unchangeable throughout time, because we're managing permissions, then we're able to keep the organization adaptable and flexible over time. Now, building a plugin should be as easy as this. We're simply creating an action plugin that can or may not inherit from our base plugin. You decide. And then from then on, that plugin will have a permission, of course, an initializing function, a constructor. And then from there, it has a function to do something based on the permission that that function has. And this in the account that's signing that transaction. So if we look a bit deeper into what the architecture looks, it's something like this. So when we're speaking about me in the app interface, I'd be in this corner calling our SDK to initialize a DAO. My DAO factory will create a DAO instance. That DAO instance is saved in our DAO registry, may or may not get an ENS subdomain. And from then on, it becomes a plugin game. So I go in, I have all my plugins. As developers, we're building the plugins. The plugin contract will contain the plugin logic. It may be supported by some helper contracts around. And once the logic is completed, that each plugin will have a plugin manager. The role of the plugin manager is dealing with the versioning and supporting the deployment of that plugin into the plugin registry. The plugin registry holds all the plugins that exist within the ecosystem so that then the DAOs using the plugin installer can install the DAOs onto their specific plugin. Now, what are the benefits of this? Number one, gas. So because we're only using whatever we need on each on our DAOs, then we're saving on gas through batch calls. We can do on or off-chain transactions. We can do meta transactions. And so we're not paying for functionality that we're not using. On a second level, we know that the only constant within the ecosystem is change, and we're optimizing for that. So we're allowing the revoking and granting and freezing of permissions to make sure that organizations can evolve. We're allowing our contracts to be upgradable, but in reality, it should be more of a role management and permission management than it is an upgrading of the contracts. On a third level, it is unopinionated. So we're taking into account that we don't know the use cases of the future for DAOs. And we're building a framework that should be so lean that should allow for any crazy idea to surface. And then, of course, at a fourth level, this should be flexible and open so that everyone can build on top of it and do whatever they want with this public good. So what I'm trying to get at is that ultimately each organization is unique. And if we're really supporting that new reality, then we need to make sure that within these 3 pillars that I mentioned earlier, developers can do whatever they need for supporting those requirements. And so the way we're envisioning this as it grows is that it should be a hyperstructure ecosystem. So we have in one end the protocol, extremely lean, extremely small. And then from there, we have the plugins, which feed and add themselves onto the Aragon protocol. Now, engineers will speak to these contracts through our software development kit, and end users will get to it through the Aragon app. And so we're building one interface for this protocol, but nothing is stopping any of you from building another interface, tapping into your own vertical into use case that you want to be tapping into. And the idea is that the Aragon app in many ways serves as this home base. So currently we're looking at a DAO ecosystem that is extremely fragmented. There's a bunch of different tools out there. If you're not technical or you're just starting out, getting to understand the interfaces of all these different products can be very intimidating. And the idea is that the Aragon app serves as your visual dashboard where all of these organizations combine and you can manage them all within the same space. So, when is this done and out? So contracts are done, yay. We're currently going through the first initial phase of the audit. There will be 2 more. And then on parallel, of course, the app and interface is being developed. We presume that by the end of first quarter of next year, all of this should be out. Meanwhile, we're testing stuff out. We're very open and wanting to receive feedback. So if you want to check out our GitHub repo and look at some stuff, please scan the QR code. I'm more than happy to get more builder feedback and, of course, listen to your needs to make sure that this works well with all of the crazy ideas that you may be building, and ultimately looking forward to building it with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Juliette. We have time for some questions.
All right.
I have a question for you.
It was super clear. Yes.
Is there a rage quit functionality in Aragon?
That's a great plugin. So not embedded, but that's kind of the idea, right? The idea is that if there's a functionality that anyone wants, it can easily be added as a plugin and everyone can make use of it.
What is rage quit?
Rage quit, for those of you who don't know, is a functionality added by the Moloch contracts, which allows DAO members to rage quit from their organization and then get a bit of the assets that they had put in to first join the organization.
What has been the biggest learning you got over the years in terms of how users interact and operate the platform?
The Aragon platform?
Yes.
So there's a few. Number one, there's a few different kicks there because I think, and a big lesson there is that we're looking always at kind of 2 layers. So on one layer we have the protocol layer, and another layer we have the app, right? And I think that's a key distinction because the protocol layer should remain entirely unopinionated, lean, flexible, open to whatever crazy ideas the world may have. Whereas in an interface layer, certainly we're talking then to end users, and so the game and the strategy there is different. So that's one. I think diving deeper into that, it means that what we got from client was that even though we had all these functionalities and all these possibilities to be built on the protocol, it wasn't until we provided the front end wording and features around it that people actually started using some of this. So to put an example, we had a lot of like finance apps, voting apps, these different apps already embedded. But it wasn't until we put like a model that asked like, what type of organization are you building? And it was like company, NGO, political party, that people actually understood kind of like how to bundle them together and use them. And I think the key insight there, again, looking at those two layers and how they play differently is a key aspect of the learning experience. And then on a third level, it's that a lot of the flywheel that we got from integrations on client, we got the moment that we launched the SDK Connect. And so what that means for me is that developers don't want to build so much Solidity code, they'd rather write JavaScript. And how can we make sure that we're building an ecosystem with enough packaging and software development kits to make it like easy to just build and flywheel a lot faster.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, thanks, guys.
I think if there's no more questions, yeah, we'll wrap it up there. Thank you, Juliette.